The fact that Keiichi has decided to go with a peaceful and non-violent route says to me that that's the difference between Rika trusting in Keiichi in this timeline or Rika distrusting in him. And as most of you know watching these reviews, I never witnessed or experienced anything Higurashi other than this new version. So, to me, this is all like me trying to piece together what's happening. You know, it somehow links up with Rika, but I'm still not sure of what causes resets. But the idea of trust seemingly is the most important thing for the idea of a timeline working out. But at the same time, it feels like this might be the most hopeful and most optimistic version of a timeline we've seen in the face of the worst timeline we've ever experienced. The idea of child abuse and a horrible situation. But the fact that we're not going back to what's probably already happened, which most likely is why we see these images of Keiichi beating the uncle to death, that clearly didn't work out before, and the idea that he's going out of his way to stick up and make sure no one hurts him and they do it right, so that not only do they not get thrown in jail and then we have a little girl crying and blaming herself even more than she already does, because one of her best friends is now locked up for life. We're also going the route of trying to actually properly convict this bastard rather than taking actions into our own hands, which clearly is only causing more resets as we've already experienced up until this point. And that's very interesting to me because you get this really interesting dilemma where if you've seen the original, obviously you can dissect the conversation a completely different way than those of us who haven't experienced it. But watching Rika be very serious, and I've always loved her voice acting because it switches between innocent child to very mature adult, and the fluctuation in range is just so immaculate. It is phenomenally done that it brings out such an horrifyingly mature aura in such a cute little child's body that you just don't know how to feel or interact when she does get this serious. But the idea that she's standing up for Keiichi, which honestly it feels like the first time she's really done so in this anime. There's been moments where it felt like maybe she was encouraging him, but it never really felt like she was by his side 100%. This is the moment that feels like she is. So if it fails, goddamn, what is that gonna look like? Because we know we're gonna experience a lot of bad things, but I'm just wondering in my head, if this timeline works out and we properly deal with the uncle, where do we go from here? If we continue to fail after this point, does that mean we will reset and revert back to when we finish this arc if it does work out? There's a lot of possibilities, but it's fascinating to see someone stand up and not want to go down the violent road who seemingly has had a very violent past in different timelines. I mean, you start this anime off with him killing people, and then you, with each arc, get some sort of like imagery of something bad happening, usually with him at the helm actually causing the bloodshed. So the fact that someone like Rika is clearly trusting in that, seemingly knowing of what happened before, says to me that she believes there's an honest-to-go shot of actually dealing with this and not having it end in complete chaos. I know there's going to be a lot of people talking about the social workers and there's going to be a lot of hate thrown towards them, but I do think it is important to realize that the reason why there is so much like waiting back and really observing is once someone does make a false report, it's very, very difficult to ever prove that there is real abuse going on. And from my experience, knowing people very close to me who have had to go through social workers, who've had to monitor abusive parents and things like that, they generally care. They really do. I have not met anyone who's had to go through those types of programs who have told me that the people working alongside them trying to help them didn't care. They do. It's just following the law and trying to catch those people in acts is very, very difficult. And if the child is denying it, even if you know something's happening, you have to have physical proof. You can't go kicking down doors, because if you do that and nothing's going on and it is a picture perfect home, not only will you lose your job, you will never be able to catch that abuse in the making again. And not only will that entire company probably be sued and shut down, more people will get harmed in the future. So it's one of those things that I know there's going to be a lot of anger, and don't get me wrong, I feel that exact same anger, but it is not a case of them not caring. It's a case of you have to have the proof. And the best way is honestly what they're doing. The more people who go to support her, the numbers increasing, is the more likely they will have a reason to actually firmly act on there really being something happening. When the previous abuse is being linked up to the aunt and the uncle disappearing for a year is because he was making income, while yeah, you can smell a lie from a million miles away, at the end of the day, it's enough to cover the tracks. Once the child says nothing is happening, it really is difficult to catch that in the making. The thing is it's just such a sad situation. It really, really is. It makes you more depressed than any of the horrifying imagery we've seen. And we know when we do catch it firsthand, it's going to be more gory and probably worse than anything we see. Not even if there's not blood, but just to see the crushing sorrow on her face, you know how bad it is. And I think the reason this works so well is, unsurprisingly, I was told that the original author of Higurashi had first-hand experience with child services working with them before writing this and blowing up. So that's not surprising to me, because I've always said that the anime writers, the manga writers, the visual novel writers, the ones who write these types of stories and do so in a realistic manner are ones who've had first-hand experience with the subject matter. That's why I love authors like Mari Okada, who's had a lot of trauma in her own life, and that comes into her real work. Those who've experienced it and had first-hand interactions with it can write it in a real and raw way that doesn't feel like mockery or flattery or just something that feels artificial and lacking in substance. Those who don't have that experience, even if they have an honest to good heart in trying to portray it, you can't do it without that first-hand experience. And that's why I think you don't, unless you're really just blindly looking at this saying the social workers don't care, you can really dissect this and say they do care, but you can't just go busting down houses. If the child's saying nothing's happening and there's no physical proof of anything bad happening to her, it's very hard. If the child's coming to school with a black eye and she's saying nothing is happening, they have more of a reason to bust down that door and make sure nothing is happening. But if she's looking like she's fed, she's fine, and the only thing that's happening is she's saying she has a cold, unless she's disappearing for weeks on end, there's a lot of things that can't happen. So to me, it doesn't feel like it's being written as they don't give a shit. It's more of, it's very difficult, especially considering that that same child has lied in the past. It's just such a hard thing to swallow and stomach, and I think they did a perfect job at making it disappointingly depressing but realistic, where they would want to do something if there's definitive proof. And the more people coming is honestly the best way to do so. And I'm not the type of person who says child abusers should just go to jail and get away scot-free. I'm the type of person who says they deserve that baseball bat to the head. Apparently that's an unpopular opinion in 2020, which is one that I'll always fight back against, but those types of scumbags deserve all the worst kinds of death. However, in Higurashi's case, not only is seemingly brutality the cause of all this suffering, at the same time, there is an honest-to-go shot at bringing enough numbers to get something happening, and if that doesn't work, well, goddamn, Shion, Mion, everyone else, go beat the bastard to death, because that's all you can do. I think that buildup of one trying to kill, doesn't care what happens to her own life, and our boy standing up and actually getting beaten for that, I think is an incredibly powerful moment, especially with how they directed it. The directing across the episode was phenomenal. I think it was one of the most vibrant and interestingly to look at episodes where you're going above with perspective. You're just doing a lot of really interesting shots. The shot composition in this episode, I think, was without a doubt the best. It was the most interesting. It was the most gripping. It never felt like anything was boring. There wasn't technically a lot of movement in the episode, but with the way they continued to frame different sequences, it always felt like something immaculate was happening, and that's really engaging to me. It was a painful episode that made you mad, it made you sad above all else, but you understand why nothing can happen until there's enough proof. I know there's gonna be so many people who will just latch on and say, I hate this service. That service protects more kids than you realize. It's just, unfortunately, the law has to be followed, because if we didn't have that, then a lot of people would just get busted down, innocent people would get hurt or, worse. So there's gotta be a rules. It's just sometimes those rules, they don't help in time. So it's one of those things that's just disappointing, and you hope something's gonna happen, and hopefully with the word of mouth being spread that they'll be able to do something. Otherwise, this whole town's gonna band together and kill that bastard, which I wouldn't be crying in the slightest if that does happen. I do fear that when the entire town most likely does come to his door and they bust it down, she's gonna have the most picture-perfect room. She'll have no bruises, and I don't know, because if that happens, she's gonna die. That uncle will do way worse than whatever he's been doing, and only time will tell. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on this depressingly realistic episode of Higurashi When They Cry. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave, like, share, your support, and hit that subscribe button if you're happy new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.